It's hard to believe looking at it, but this thing used to be a sign of luxury living. But now this barn find Jaguar needs some serious love. It's our job to bring the Brooklyn's green paint and tan leather interior back to life. This is 303 Car Care, and I'm Bob Galuska. What we're driving and detailing today is a 1994 Jaguar XJ6. The Jaguar XJ series debuted in 1968 with 5 major facelifts all the way through the early 2000s. The XJ40 series that ran from 1986 to 1994 is what we'll be taking a closer look at today. This platform based more focus on build quality as well as simplification versus the outgoing model, along with a more squared off body. The standard engine option for the XJ6 is a 4.0 liter inline AJ6 attached to a 4-speed automatic transmission. With this being a barn find, it has been sitting a while and we have a lot of work ahead to get this car where we want it to be. Let's get started. I'm joined by 303 brand manager DJ, who's going to be doing the detailing of the XJ6 today. You've done a walk around. What stands out?
So as you can see, the car is very dirty and dusty, but there's a few things that we were able to notice while we took a quick look at it. On the trunk here, there's some etching in the clear coat that we can see, so we're going to kind of stay away from the trunk. We're going to give it a wash. We're not going to do any polishing on it. We'll let the owner kind of figure out what he wants to do there. On some of the cleaner spots on the side of the car, there's some pretty heavy oxidation and swirl marks. So we're not going to do any test spots. We're just going to start with a compound. Other than that, we're going to give it a wash and do a second walk around and figure out where we need to go from there.
Cool. Sounds good. All right, let's dive in and start rinsing off this car.
First thing we're going to do is give this a quick wash so we can see underneath all the dirt and debris and see what we're working with. One thing that we're doing is we're washing from the top down, so all the dirt and debris goes down and we only have to wash it once. If you start on the bottom, you'll rinse that off and then the dirt will come up from the top. So we just want to make sure we're being as efficient as possible with this. Now that we rinsed out the outside, we're going to pop the hood and see what we're working with. We'll clean it and we'll let it dry and wash the rest of the car. As you can see, underneath the hood, it's pretty filthy. We got a rat's nest over here. As we mentioned before, we're going to cover up the electrical components. Something whenever you're washing underneath the hood, make sure any electrical components don't get hit with water or your air filter. We're using our wheel and tire cleaner. While this is designed for wheels and tires, because underneath the hood there's a lot of plastic and rubber components, it's perfect to use for that. I wouldn't necessarily use it on all the exterior surfaces of your car, but for an engine cleaner, it works for that. So now we sprayed the product on there, we're going to be using a detailing brush. It's just a soft bristled brush, either boar's hair or synthetic, and this will help us agitate and lift any dirt and debris from the surface. Now that we clean this off, we're going to use the bag that we use to cover the electrical components to take the rat's nest out of the engine bay. Now that we've cleaned the engine bay and got most of the rat's nest out of there, we're going to move on to foaming the car. So one of the reasons why we foam the car is so that we let it dwell, lift the dirt and debris from the surface before we rinse and do a hand wash of the car. So now that we rinsed the car off, we're cleaning the wheels and tires. We're using wheel and tire cleaner on the tires and then wheel cleaner on the wheels. We're using a specific wheel cleaner on the wheels just because it sat so long. Then we're going to foam the car and do a hand wash before correcting the paint. Now that the washing's done, we're going to be claying the paint to remove any contaminants. To do that, we're going to be using our speed detailer as a lubricant and our clay mitt to help lift the contaminants off the surface. So earlier we talked about removing contaminants from the paint. The reason that you want to do that before polishing the paint is so that you aren't rubbing those contaminants into the paint and possibly introducing even more swirl marks. Just makes it a quicker and easier process. So now that the car is cleaned up, we're going to inspect the paint again. So you can see some pretty heavy swirl marks on the hood. On the roof, there's some oxidation and heavy swirl marks. And on the side, definitely heavy swirl marks. And on the trunk, there's clear coat failure, heavy swirl marks, and oxidation. So based on that, overall we think the plan's still the same. We'll start with a compound and then we'll hit it with a polish and then coat the car for protection afterwards. We got the paint to a level of correction that we feel pretty good about. It's not perfect, but we took a conservative approach so we didn't burn through the clear. So now that the car is polished, we're going to add protection to it. There's a lot of options when it comes to protection, but we're choosing graphene nano spray coating. It gives you a year of protection. Spray it on the applicator pad, apply in a crosshatch pattern, let it haze for 5 to 10 minutes, and buff it off. Let's get started. For the tires and trim, we're going to be using our aerospace protectant. It'll leave it with a natural finish and it will also prevent any fading and cracking. Plastic and rubber are some of the most vulnerable surfaces on your vehicle. If exposed to UV rays from the sun, they can fade and crack. Using a protectant regularly will help keep these surfaces looking like new. Next up is the interior. Normally you'd use a regular cleaner. We use the steam cleaner to loosen any dirt and kill any bacteria, mold, or dust mites because the car sat for so long.
That wraps up the work in the garage. About 8 hours to bring the old Jag back to life. DJ, any final thoughts?
It's come a long way since it first started. The paint looks great. We were a little bit cautious with the paint correction, but it's at a really good level, we feel, and the interior is in really rough shape. It looks great now. We were very surprised at how good a shape the wheels and tires were in too for it sitting in a barn for so long. Very happy with the results.
Yeah, I mean, the car looks awesome. Okay, now we're gonna take it for a spin and find out more about the car and its owner. We're joined by Matt Bannock. He found the Jag and has done months of repairs to get this thing running. There were three main issues that needed to be addressed to make this car drivable again. What were they?
Well, it's kind of the basics. So, I mean, obviously it's been sitting, so the fuel system needed to be addressed. It was leaking fuel. The brake system, it had rusty lines, so it was leaking brake fluid, and these things have a huge brake fluid reservoir, so we had to address that.
Okay.
Lastly is the charging system. So the alternator had frozen up just from sitting in a damp garage, threw the belt off. So had to get a new alternator and get that all working, but now it seems to be working pretty well.
The car looks great. Now it runs great. How about we take it for a spin?
Let's go.
How'd you end up getting this car?
So I actually inherited this car from my uncle, who had bought it used, I think in the late 90s, early 2000s. So when he had passed away, I had the opportunity to pick it up and put it back together to get it working.
What kind of shape was the car in when you first found it?
Well, it was sitting in the garage for the past, we're guessing 10 years. So if you look at the oil change sticker on here, which I think we probably have somewhere, the oil was changed in 05 and it had 141,000 miles at that point. Right now it's got 143,000 miles on it. So when I picked it up, it was parked with the windows down in the garage, covered in dust. So barn find's pretty accurate for this.
Yeah, that's what it looked like when we first saw it.
We ended up bringing it back on an enclosed trailer, and that was an adventure in itself. We had to pick it up in the winter, and it was on a long driveway, dragging it out, but we got it all back, got it back to Chicago. Thankfully, the transmission was disconnected, but thankfully it was disconnected while it was in neutral. So we were able to push it around, which was good. I think really he stopped driving it because of these are known, I guess, for the shock mounts going bad or the upper rubber bushings coming out. So as soon as he started driving, this thing would pound like crazy.
What's the driving experience like with this? Because it looks like a big heavy car. Does it drive like a big heavy car, or is it actually somewhat agile?
It's kind of a big heavy car. It's very quiet. It runs really smooth. We haven't touched anything on the ignition, spark plugs, anything. So fairly surprising.
Yeah, it feels like it runs strong.
This platform actually has kind of an interesting history. And I'm sure some English car enthusiasts will get upset about my my recollection of this, but I'll do the best I can. They call this an XJ40 platform. And they started to develop it like in 1972 and didn't actually release it until 1986.
A lot of development time.
So one of the longest development times ever. And then after that, it ran until 1994, which this is. So Jaguar went through, I think it was British Leland, there was some issues with them where they split apart during that time, and then Ford actually bought Jaguar in like 1990. So there's a lot of different owners in it and a lot of different things that happen. So it's kind of, the history is interesting.
Now that it's back on the road, what's your future plans with the car? You plan on holding on to it for a while, or just kind of a quick flip?
It probably won't be a quick flip. I mean, there's still some things to fine tune. We're debating, I'm sure when you guys detailed it, you saw there's some burn through on the paint on the trunk from just being in the sun. It's got a lot of door dings. I'm not sure if it was from being at the golf course or being at the bar where all these door dings came from. So we might repaint parts of it, probably drive it a little bit, but it's not, we like a lot of different types of cars. So this is not a long-term keeper. We'll drive it for a while. I don't think it'll be hard to sell just because you don't see, well, it's not necessarily a car that's worth a ton of money. You don't see many that are nice anymore. They're usually very rusty. Certain parts of the frame are known to rust out. So this one's very solid, surprisingly. So I'm sure someone who's truly into Jaguars would appreciate it maybe a little more than I do.
Once you get rid of this, is there anything you're thinking about that you want to buy next, or something you've always dreamed of owning?
I'm one of those people that spends too much time on Facebook Marketplace and sees all the stuff that I really want to buy. I have a Fox body Mustang, but I want a Fox body that has T-tops. They only made those for a few years. They're kind of rare. There's a ton of different Mopars that I want, from like a 69 Charger to even the older Chargers, like 66, 67, which most people don't necessarily like. I like to buy things that maybe people wouldn't fix, so that I fix them and like give them their next lease on life and then sell them and then someone else can enjoy it.
We want to thank Matt for joining us and letting us detail the XJ6. A lot of the products you saw us use are available at all major automotive retailers as well as Amazon, so check them out for yourself. See you next time on 303 Car Care.